Welcome back, students. Welcome to biology classes. Today we are going to see 11th science biology, and we are going to resume the chapter 14, that is respiration in plants. We have already covered so many topics of this chapter, and yet we are going to see the last topic of this chapter, right? And today, before starting with the main topic, first we will see the difference between the fermentation and the aerobic respiration, right? So we have seen this two of them in detail, right? So we have already seen aerobic respiration. In that we have seen glycolysis. We have seen about the Krebs cycle. We have already seen about the electron transport chain, right? And also after the glycolysis part, we have seen about the fermentation. That is two types of fermentation, right? So we are going to see now the difference between them, that what exactly the fermentation is and what happens in the aerobic respiration, right? So in fermentation, it accounts for incomplete oxidation of glucose. So in fermentation, the complete oxidation does not take place of glucose. So there will be the incomplete oxidation which will be occurring in the of the glucose in fermentation. But when we are talking about the aerobic respiration, in aerobic respiration, there will be complete oxidation of glucose which will be seen. So the first main difference between both of this is in fermentation, incomplete oxidation of glucose is observed, while in aerobic respiration, complete oxidation of glucose is seen. The second difference is in fermentation, there is net gain of only two molecules of ATP, right? So here there will be gain of only two molecules of ATP, but while we are talking about the aerobic respiration, right, there is no net gain. There is comparatively more net gain of ATP. So in fermentation, only two molecules of ATP is gained, right? But while in aerobic, more than two is gained, right? While the third difference says that in fermentation, NADH is oxidized to NAD plus very slowly, right? But while in aerobic respiration, it is occurring very fast, right? So there is some changes which are occurring inside the reactions, right? So in fermentation, it occurs very slowly. That is the oxidation of NADH to NAD plus, right? While in aerobic respiration, that NADH is oxidized to NAD very fast, right? So this is the main difference about the fermentation and the aerobic respiration, right? Now we are going to see about the next important topic, and that is the amphibolic pathway. This is the last topic of this chapter, right? So here the glucose is the favored substrate for respiration. Now you, after understanding the whole chapter, have known that the basic substrate or the basic favored substrate is what? Glucose, right? And glucose is needed for carrying out the respiration, right? So all the carbohydrates, they are usually converted into glucose before used for respiration, right? So all the carbohydrates, right, that is all the carbohydrates which are normally present, right, they all are converted into the glucose before they are being used for the respiration process, right? Same way the fat needs to be broken down into glycerol and fatty acids, right? So even the fatty acids of even the fats, that is the lipids, they are also being broken down into two parts. The first is the fatty acids and the second is the glycerol. And this fatty acids and glycerol, they are further broken into acetyl CoA and they enter into the respiratory pathway. So again, with fats also, upon the breakdown, they are converted into glycerol and fatty acids, and this glycerol and fatty acids, they are going to form or they are going to be converted into the acetyl CoA. This acetyl CoA enters inside the Krebs cycle, which is a respiratory pathway. So none another, they are entering into the respiration, right? Same way the proteins also broken down into amino acids, and further they enter into the Krebs cycle. So again, even proteins also, they are responsible for entering inside the respiration as they enter inside the Krebs cycle. So breaking down process within living organism is called catabolism, and synthesis process is called anabolism. So whenever the breakdown of complex molecule is taking place, that is catabolism, and when a complex molecule is being produced by the combination of simpler uh, molecules, then it is known as anabolism. Hence, the respiration can be said as amphibolic pathway because it is carrying out two of the things. First is the catabolism and second is the anabolism. So let's see about this flow chart. You can see the three main biomolecules you are over here. The first is the fats, the second is the carbohydrates, and the third is the proteins, right? So fats, upon the breakdown of these fats, it is going to be converted into fatty acids and glycerol. Further, what it does is, this is having the ability that it gets converted into a compound which is known as acetyl-CoA. And this acetyl-CoA has been entering inside the Krebs cycle, right? So this is the first, that is this fat. They are entering into the respiratory pathway in the Krebs cycle. Same way, the second is the carbohydrates. This carbohydrates, they are converted into the simple sugars, that is the glucose, right? This glucose gets converted to glucose 6-phosphate. This glucose 6-phosphate gets converted to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So this is nothing but what? The glycolysis pathway. And from this fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, it is going to convert itself into um, two parts. The first is DHAP, that is dihydroxyacetone phosphate, as well as the second is glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, right? And this is the reversible reaction. That is, this DHAP, it again get converted into glyceraldehyde 3 phosphates, two molecules or two chain runs from there. And it leads to the formation of the pyruvic acid. And this pyruvic acid, it is going to form the acetyl-CoA. And this acetyl-CoA again enters inside the Krebs cycle, right? So even the carbohydrates are also undergoing the Krebs cycle, that is, it is involved in the respiratory pathway. The third type of the biomolecule is the proteins, where proteins get converted into amino acids, right? So when the proteins are being broken down into simpler forms, the amino acids are formed. And this amino acids are nothing but this pyruvic acid. So this amino acids are being converted into the pyruvic acid. This pyruvic acid is going to form the acetyl-CoA, and this acetyl-CoA enters inside the Krebs cycle. So none another, those three of them, when the normally carbohydrates are responsible for the basic substrate of the respiration, that it provides the sugar, right? That is energy. But just like the carbohydrates also, even the proteins as well as the fats, is two of them, none another, they convert themselves into the simpler forms, and then they convert into reaction or a compound through which they enter inside the respiratory pathway, right? So none another, these three of them, right, they enter into the respiratory pathway and they have a major role in production of the energy. So I hope you are very clear with today's topic, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.